In the arena of the French Olympics, government troops set up sniper rifles along the banks of the Seine River. However, their target wasn't terrorists, but sharks lurking in the water. A shark was seen darting through the water at an astonishing speed, evading the blockade of bullets. As it skimmed the river bottom, it accidentally touched several World War II era shells. The story begins with two young boys planning to fish out some old objects from the Seine. At first, they only retrieved some worn-out household items. But on the third attempt, the magnet suddenly clung tightly to something at the bottom of the river. Thinking they had discovered a treasure, the two excitedly pulled it ashore, only to be shocked to find it was an artillery shell. With the competition set to take place in the river in a few days, they immediately reported the situation to the police. However, the officer in charge of the matter seemed to downplay it when facing the media. He claimed that such situations were very common and that he and his colleagues had already fished out hundreds of shells from the river, which was nothing unusual. But as soon as the news spread, a marine biologist named Anna rushed to the police station. She warned the authorities that the real danger now was not these shells, but a shark measuring up to 10 meters in length. 3 years ago, Anna's team had discovered it at sea. To collect samples, the captain had intended to gently touch the shark and inject a tracking device. It was supposed to be a simple operation, but the shark suddenly went berserk and then took revenge on the crew members one by one. When Anna personally went into the water to rescue them, the team members on the boat had already disappeared without a trace. Only a giant shark covered in scars remained in the water. Its forehead looked like it had experienced countless battles, fierce and stern. The moment it set its sights on Anna, it immediately took an offensive posture and then lunged at her at full speed. Anna reacted swiftly, hitting the shark's body with a harpoon gun, but she was also dragged into the deep sea. At the critical moment, she pulled out the dagger she carried with her and quickly cut the fishing net entangled around her ankle, narrowly escaping death at the last second. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Anna was shocked to learn that this shark had traversed tens of thousands of kilometers and appeared in French territory. According to the tracking data, it was now living in the Seine River. Although theoretically saltwater sharks cannot survive in fresh water, since Anna herself was a marine biologist, the chief still dispatched police forces to assist her in the investigation. Soon they arrived at the designated area by speedboat, and 3 divers entered the water one after another. At first, they only saw debris accumulated at the bottom of the river, but as they gradually expanded their search, they discovered that there was indeed a terrifying presence lurking in the Seine. A 3-meter-long fish had been bitten to death, and even a car door had been punctured, leaving 2 rows of horrifying tooth marks. What was even more chilling was that they seemed to have caught a glimpse of that gigantic shadow. The 3 immediately panicked, surfaced, and returned to the boat. They then used sonar detection, and sure enough, the image of the shark appeared on the screen. To avoid affecting the upcoming competition, Captain Mike suggested closing the sluice gates to try to capture the shark alive. However, when the mayor learned of this, she flatly vetoed the idea, citing that the Olympics had invested as much as $17 billion in funding. If they made a big fuss over a shark, they would inevitably be ridiculed by other countries. So she ordered that the matter be handled in a low-key manner and that public panic must not be triggered. Left with no choice, everyone had to comply. Anna immediately had someone purchase a bucket of animal blood, planning to lure the shark out, trap it with a giant net, and inject a tranquilizer into its body. Just then, her assistant brought bad news. A group of animal protection activists had decided to take matters into their own hands and attempt to rescue the shark. They had infiltrated the ancient tombs on the banks of the Seine and were preparing to use sonar balls to lure the shark there. When the police learned of this, they took emergency action, because this shark had already caused multiple deaths, and their actions were tantamount to courting death. However, by the time the officers arrived at the tomb, it was too late. The sharks had already surrounded the group's leader, and there were 2 of them, one large and one small. The girl reached out to stroke the head of the small shark, as if trying to tame them with this gesture. But before long, the 2 sharks simultaneously dove underwater and disappeared. Anna shouted to warn the girl to leave quickly, as this was a signal that the sharks were about to attack. Mike even jumped into the water, trying to forcibly rescue the person, but unexpectedly, the girl refused to cooperate and even bit him. At that moment, a shark suddenly leaped out of the water and swallowed the girl into its belly. The shore was instantly in chaos, with people frantically falling into the river, quickly becoming prey for the sharks. In just a few minutes, dozens of people had lost their lives. Faced with this brutal disaster, the mayor pushed all the responsibility onto the police chief and ordered the police not to interfere further, with the military taking full control. She asserted that it was just a shark and couldn't cause much of a stir. However, she had no idea that the situation was far more horrifying than imagined. In the accident, the police had killed the small shark and brought it back to the laboratory. Anna personally dissected its abdomen, only to discover a chilling truth. This baby shark, only 2 months old, was already carrying multiple baby sharks inside its body. Anna speculated that these creatures might have the ability to reproduce parthenogenetically without needing males to reproduce. If this hypothesis held true, France would face an unprecedented catastrophe. Out of concern, several police officers decided to take private action and secretly eliminate this man-eating shark. They once again entered the underground tomb and placed sonar equipment at the bottom of the river to lure the target. Soon after, they lit a glow stick. However, the scene before their eyes shocked them to the core. What had gathered was not one shark, but hundreds and thousands of baby sharks. At the same time, the Olympics kicked off in full swing on the banks of the Seine, with the riverbank already packed with spectators. The mayor was in high spirits, talking big in front of the media, but never mentioning the threat of the sharks, because she had already requested the military to handle security. She firmly believed that shooting a shark would be an easy task. With a single gunshot from the mayor, the athletes jumped into the water one after another, completely unaware that hundreds of sharks were lurking beneath the surface. Halfway through the competition, the slower athletes began to disappear one by one. But most people were so immersed in the tense atmosphere of the event that they didn't notice at all. Only some sharp-eyed spectators on the shore noticed the anomaly. Soon, everyone's attention was drawn to the surface of the river. A huge dorsal fin darted through the water, followed by a shark leaping into the air, instantly swallowing an athlete. Only then did the crowd erupt in terrified screams. Military speedboats raced over, with soldiers firing heavily at the water's surface. Snipers on the shore also quickly joined the attack. However, they overlooked one danger: the shells buried at the bottom of the river. The startled sharks dived swiftly into the water, and the currents they stirred up accidentally triggered these deadly objects. The thunderous sound of explosions rang out, and the shock waves instantly whipped up huge waves that swept towards the shore like a flood. The scene was thrown into chaos in an instant, with many spectators being swept into the river by the surging water. When the commotion subsided and the water gradually returned to calm, the Seine was already in ruins, as if it had experienced a devastating disaster.